It's time for another mock draft. It's 5 weeks into the NFL season. It's 6 weeks into the college football season. We've seen NFL teams kind of show us who they're starting to be. And so that draft order is starting to get kind of a little bit more what we're looking at. And we're seeing college football prospects kind of rise and fall from what we thought they were this summer. So I always like to do my second mock draft about this time, and that's what we're going to do here. Now, for this mock, I am using NFL Mock Draft Database. I think that's one of the best websites out there for a draft simulator. Not only do they have a draft simulator, but they also have a lot of resources that I think are really pretty cool, where you can track how people are mocking certain players, consensus draft boards, consensus mock drafts. Lots of great information here. So if you love the NFL draft, you love mock drafts, make sure you're going to NFL Mock Draft Database. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the mock draft. Here's what I think. Now, these early mock drafts for me are, whenever I do a mock, it's always what I think is going to happen, not necessarily what I want to happen. And so, I may have a guy ranked as my number one offensive tackle, and I have him the third, fourth guy going. That's how it may be. But in these early mock drafts, what I like to do is kind of go more off of my rankings, because those are the players that I've seen. And I think I still try to go with best fits. Like I said, I'm going to lean more towards my rankings early on. And as we get further into the season, I'll start to kind of shift it a little bit. So, like I said, let's not waste any more time. Let's get started. We have the Carolina Panthers starting us off. And they have to go quarterback here. They have to go quarterback. Baker Mayfield hasn't worked. Sam Darnold didn't work before that. Matt Rule's gone, largely because they couldn't get the quarterback situation figured out. And I think there's three guys. We see the three guys here, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, and Will Levis. I think one of those three guys are the clear cream of this quarterback crop. And for the longest time, I had C.J. Stroud as the top quarterback, who I had going first. But I don't do that right here. I'm going Will Levis. And the reason I'm going Will Levis is, at this point, he has moved into my top quarterback ranking. His physical attributes, he can throw deep, he can drive the ball deep, he can drive the ball in the intermediate areas, he can throw with touch, he can throw with anticipation. He's got the ability to read defenses. And I think another thing is, he's played in an NFL offense the last 2 years at Kentucky. And not only has he played in an NFL offense, he's played in that Shanahan-McVay offense that is just sweeping the NFL. It's the most popular offense in the NFL right now. Half the league is running it. And here you have a guy who, as a junior, played under Liam Cohen, who is now the Rams offensive coordinator. And this year he's playing with Rich Sangrello, who was San Francisco's quarterbacks coach this past year. So, I think that, you keep hearing all this love for Will Levis, and I think it's because he has these these athletic, physical traits. He's a good athlete. He's got size, 6'3", over 230 pounds. He's got a strong arm, and he's played in this NFL offense. So that's why I'm going here right now. Plus, he got elevated to my number one quarterback ranking. All right, Las Vegas, picking number 2. I don't think they're going to go quarterback here. I know it's, easy to believe that, but I don't see Josh McDaniels wanting to work with a rookie quarterback. I think Derek Carr's not the problem they have there, so I think they move on. And I actually think they go Jalen Carter, the defensive tackle from Las Vegas. Jalen Carter, is a kind of a do-it-all defensive tackle. The Raiders, they have Max Crosby, Chandler Jones on the edge. So Will Anderson, are you going to take him there? Probably not. So I think getting a interior defender, an interior pass rusher to go with those two guys is only going to make this defense better. All right, pick 3, Pittsburgh Steelers. Lots of ways that they can go. Are they going to end up with this pick? Probably not. I think they'll win enough games to get out of the top 5, probably out of the top 10. They're too well coached. And I think if they're sitting here, though, they have to take Will Anderson. They have to take the Alabama pass rusher, who's probably may end up being the best player in this draft class. Just a dominant player off the edge. And Pittsburgh just sitting up there, they got to just take the best player available. And I think you look at TJ Watt on one side, Will Anderson on the other side. That is a scary thought for every single team in the AFC North. All right, moving on to the 4th pick, we have the Detroit Lions. I actually have them going defensive tackle. I think they would love to get Jalen Carter to fall to them. I don't think that's going to happen. Quarterback could definitely be an option. Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud are still available here. From all the people I talk to that follow and cover the Lions, they tell me that the Lions are pretty happy with Jared Goff and fits with what they want to do. So if they're not in love with one of these quarterbacks, I think they can move on. And I think what we're looking at with Detroit, they need defensive tackle, they need cornerback, okay, and linebacker. And so you look at who's best available in those areas. To me, it's Brian Brzee from Clemson, a guy that I think could do a lot of different things at that defensive tackle position. And I think they have some ends, they have some pieces, but I think he's a guy that kind of really fits with what they want to do. All right, 5th overall pick, Washington Commanders. I mean, their coach told us in a press conference the reason they're behind the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Giants is because of quarterback play. Carson Wentz, 3rd team in 3 years, isn't really setting the world on fire. They go quarterback here. They take C.J. Stroud. Now, I get it. Some people are like, why would they take C.J. Stroud? They drafted Dwayne Haskins years ago, an Ohio State quarterback, and he didn't work out. Ohio State quarterbacks don't work out. I think if you have this mindset that, like, oh, you can't draft an Ohio State quarterback because they don't work out, I just think that's lazy. Because C.J. Stroud may not be a good quarterback in the NFL, but it's not because he went to Ohio State. It's because of other reasons. The reason why Justin Fields is struggling isn't the same reason that Dwayne Haskins struggled, isn't the same reason that Cardale Jones struggled. They're different players. And I like C.J. Stroud a lot. I think he has the makings of a very good quarterback in the NFL. And I think a team like Washington, who really needs a quarterback, would be wise to take him. All right, we're on to pick 6, Houston Texans. Houston Texans got a lot of pieces. I think a lot of good young players. The Petrie, their new safety, is looking like he's a tremendous pickup in the 2nd round. You got cornerback Derek Stingley. You've got on the offense Davis Mills. I think is a quality NFL starter. So much that I don't think they're going to take quarterback here. Damon Pierce, their running back, looks like a good player. They've got some pieces on their offensive line. So I think here they kind of can go best available player, but I really think they want to bump up the defensive line. And so I'm going to go to the defensive line here. And this may be a lot early because according to the mock draft database, he's their 63rd overall player. He's listed as a defensive lineman, and that's Will McDonald from Iowa State. He's actually a pass rusher, an edge defender. I think he's vastly and criminally underrated. When I watched him this summer, he blew me away. And I think part of that reason is he's playing out of position at Iowa State. Iowa State runs that 3-3-5 defense. What they're doing is they are sliding him inside. And they are, he's rushing a lot of times from a 4-eye or sometimes a 3, and he's having some success. But every time he lines up on the outside, every time he's lined up defensive, like 5 technique or out, you see that athleticism, you see that raw potential. And I think, much like Trayvon Walker was this past year for coming out of Georgia and go to the Jaguars, played a lot of that same position, but you saw that raw athleticism. And then now that Trayvon Walker's playing on the edge with the Jaguars, he's showing that, hey, he's been probably pretty worthy of that number 1 overall pick. And I think Will McDonald's very similar in that sense. Pick 7, Atlanta Falcons. This is where I have Bryce Young going. Yes, they drafted Desmond Ridder last year in the 3rd, 4th. I don't care. He's a guy that, in my opinion, is going to be a backup quarterback in this NFL. In the NFL, I think the Falcons, if they're picking this high, and they got a guy like Bryce Young available, who I think Bryce Young's only downfall, his only knock against him, is his size. 6 foot, under 200 pounds. He's already gotten hurt this year, so I think that is going to cause him to fall below C.J. Stroud, Will Levis. But when it's all said and done, I think C.J. Stroud's the better quarterback. Could potentially be the better quarterback. He can do it all. He's got a stronger arm than Tua. He plays a lot like Tua in the sense that he's just distributing the ball, throwing it around. He didn't have the weapons that Tua did at Alabama, but also I think he's got a stronger arm, and I think that was one of Tua's issues early in his career so far. Is his lack of arm strength causes him to, not be able to have as much success, and you don't see that in Bryce Young. All right, we're at pick 8. Back to the Houston Texans. I think Houston would love to get a defensive tackle here. I had him taking Will Montgomery just a couple picks before. I think they'd love to get a defensive tackle, but I don't really know who's available here. I have Brian Brzee already gone. Jalen Carter's obviously already gone. The next guy isn't top 10 worthy in my opinion. So where do they go? And once again, I think this is maybe a little bit of a reach, but who knows? I have him going Jackson Smith-Njigba from Ohio State just to give Davis Mills another weapon. He's got Nico Collins. He's got Brandon Cooks. John Mechie was supposed to be there this past year, but, the cancer diagnosis. Bring in another receiver. Give him weapons. He's not, Davis Mills isn't going to be Patrick Mahomes going out there and making stars of his receivers, but I think he's got enough arm talent. You get some talent around him. He can be in that Kirk Cousins, maybe a little bit higher up level where he could distribute the ball and have a high functioning offense. But you just got to get him weapons. And I think Jackson Smith-Njigba can play inside. He can play outside. I think he's perfect for today's NFL with his speed and quickness and route running ability. And top 10 may be a little rich, in my opinion, for a player like him. But I think with Houston, where they're kind of at right now, not a bad pick. All right, Philadelphia Eagles, another team with 2 first-round picks. I have them going the defensive back route, and I have them going with Alabama's Malachi Moore, another guy that I think I have a lot higher on than other people. Watched him this summer, just absolutely fell in love with him. Plays in the nickel, plays some safety, kind of a hybrid defensive back. And I think a team like Philadelphia, who doesn't have a lot of weaknesses, but the secondary has kind of been one of theirs, I think, hey, you've got a top 10 pick here. Just go out and get a player with a lot of upside. And a guy like Malachi Moore can maybe come in and be a nickelback for them or a third safety for them initially, playing in that slot, playing down towards that box level, and just getting a player there that they can develop, work on, and then eventually move into a starting role, whether that is at cornerback or safety, just kind of depending on what they need. All right, pick 10, Seattle. We actually have back-to-back Seattle picks, so I'm just going to go ahead and do both of them at the same time. First pick, I have them going edge rusher, and I have them going B.J. Ojulari. And then for their next pick, I have them actually going offensive line and going to the interior for Cedric Van Pran from Georgia. All right, so let's talk about both of those picks. First one is Ojulari. Yeah, the Seahawks took Boye Mafe last year at the top of the second round. Raw, athletic edge rusher out of Minnesota. They have Darnell Taylor from Tennessee, who's kind of just been there. I really liked him coming out of Tennessee. I think they don't have that premier pass rusher. Boye Mafe has the potential to be. I thought Darnell Taylor had the potential to be, but they don't. And so I think getting another guy, even if all three of them end up being really good, having three pass rushers in today's NFL is huge. Cedric Van Pran, once again, maybe a little bit higher than some people or a lot of people have. I watched Cedric Van Pran a few days ago, a week ago. There wasn't anything I didn't like about him. He was athletic. He had power. He moved well in pass protection. He was able to move well as a run blocker. And, he's very highly in my top. He's a top 5 player in this draft class for me. And I've watched one game, so it's a little early. But I really liked him. And I think this Seattle team, without Russell Wilson, they'd love to get a quarterback here, but who are you going to take after these top 3 are gone? And maybe with picks 10 and 11, they're able to move up and get the top quarterback in this draft, especially if there's a team picking that doesn't need a quarterback. But I think they're going to go run heavy. And you took 2 tackles last year. You got Charles Cross, you got Abe Lucas, who are both looking like pretty good picks for them at the tackle. Now go in and get in the interior. Cedric Van Pran's one of the better, so far, center prospects I've seen in the last couple of years. To go out and get him, solidify that offensive line, and be a run-based team, I think that's a good move. All right, Arizona Cardinals. I have them going defensive backfield cornerback, and I have them going with Cam Smith. He's a 10th ranked player on my draft board. Kind of a do-it-all type of guy. I think Arizona, once again, they've got a lot of pieces, but you look at that secondary, they could use another outside corner to pair with. A lot of the guys they have, Byron Murphy I really like, but he's more of a nickel. They got Budda Baker at safety. They've got some players, but I think they could use a shutdown corner on that outside. And Cam Smith is a guy they could go after. All right, going back to Detroit. Once again, as I mentioned at the top, don't think they're going to go quarterback at this point. Could very well be wrong. I think defensive tackle, cornerback, linebacker are their top positions of need. And so they already took the defensive tackle. Linebacker, maybe a little early for them. So I think we got to look at cornerback. And my next best cornerback, and a guy that I think fits well with their offense or their defense, is Penn State's Joey Porter Jr. So I'll have him going there. Physical player, athletic player, got good size. Jeffrey Okuda's starting to kind of live up to his draft slot, and I think that's a good thing for Detroit, but they just need more at the cornerback position, and I think a guy like Joey Porter would be a good fit there. All right, pick 14, Cincinnati. I think this has to be offensive line. A few years back, they had that issue, do we take Penei Sewell at 5? Do we take Jamar Chase? And they went Jamar Chase, and I think they probably made the good decision. And Penei Sewell's played well, but Jamar Chase looks like a future top 5 receiver in the NFL, if he's not close to that already. But their offensive line has had issues, and Joe Burrow's continuing to get hit at a large rate, and they went the veteran route an offensive line, and it just really hasn't worked out. And so I think they go to the draft here. I'm a big Paris Johnson Jr. fan from Ohio State. He's actually not my top-rated offensive tackle in this class. I like Jalen Duncan better. A lot. I like both of those guys. I think could be top 10 picks. But we've seen in past years, like Rashawn Slater was viewed as a top 10 pick, and he fell into the teens. Penei Sewell was viewed as one of the best players in the NFL draft. He fell to 6. And so we're seeing that offensive tackles sometimes can fall a little bit further than we initially thought. And so I think wouldn't surprise me if Paris Johnson fell this far. Like I said, I have Jalen Duncan as a higher rated prospect, but Cincinnati loves to draft Ohio State players. They love to draft players from big-time programs, so that's why I went Paris Johnson Jr. over Jalen Duncan. Now, Paris Johnson Jr. is still a really good prospect, very athletic, moving from right guard to left tackle this past year, and he is a guy that I really like. He's got the athleticism to be a stud pass protector, not the most powerful run blocker, but the Bengals are a pass-first team, and so I think he'd do a great job protecting Joe Burrow. All right, pick 15, the New England Patriots. I think they'd love to get a guy like Jackson Smith-Njigba. I had him mocked here at one point, but then ended up moving him up. I'll be curious to see what the Patriots look like next year. Not having the best year this year. I think a lot of changes could be happening. But regardless of what those changes may be, I think they go cornerback, and I think they take Kelee Ringo from Georgia. Just give him another stud cornerback, someone to kind of use. When Bill Belichick's had an elite cornerback, he's been able to build that defense and that secondary around him, and I think Kelee Ringo is a guy that definitely could fit that bill. All right, Jacksonville Jaguars picking 16. A lot of different directions that they can go in this. But one player that kind of really seems, I think, to fit with what they want to do and help out Trevor Lawrence, and that's at the tight end position, and that's Michael Mayer from Notre Dame, the tight end. If you think about this with Doug Peterson, and Doug Peterson comes in from Urban Meyer, and this team really kind of takes that next step. They're playing pretty good. And you could see that talent in Trevor Lawrence. You could see some of that talent that they've been drafting. And one thing I look at with Doug Peterson, when he was in Philadelphia, they had 2 stud tight ends. They had, right now they have Dallas Goedert, who they drafted in the second round. They had also had Zach Ertz, who they eventually, Philadelphia traded away, but they had those two, that tandem, and it was a big part of their offense. And Jacksonville doesn't really have that stud tight end for them, and I think that's a big factor in that Doug Peterson offense. And I think Michael Mayer, once again, he's not Kyle Pitts. No one's Kyle Pitts, but he's not that Kyle Pitts, Darren Waller, super athletic tight end. But you look at guys like T.J. Hawkinson and Mark Andrews and more of those run and catch type tight ends. I think Michael Mayer has got that ability to be in that same conversation, top 10 tight end, weapon over the middle of the field, good run blocker. I think he fits exactly with what Jacksonville wants to do under Doug Peterson. All right, Chicago Bears pick 17. Now they're probably going to be picking a lot higher than this. But they've been very competitive, won a few games that maybe they shouldn't have. Now, you could easily say receiver, and we look at what Mock Draft Database's draft board, and they have Jordan Addison available here. And other receivers that you could look at, Quentin Johnson, Kayshon Boutte. I'm not in love with this wide receiver class. There's some guys that I think could end up being good receivers in the NFL. But for the pick 17 for Chicago, I don't see that. And Chicago needs receivers, but I don't think that's going to happen here. The other spot that they need to go to is offensive tackle. Justin Fields is a guy that I still think has talent to be a good NFL starter, but one of his biggest issues is he holds on to the ball too long. He needs an offensive line to protect him. And so that's why I think this is a no-brainer. Jalen Duncan from Maryland, like I said, is my top-ranked offensive tackle. He's a top 5, top 10 player for me. I think when it's all said and done, in my opinion, he should be a top 10 pick. But like I said, tackles sometimes fall based off of what teams' preferences are on need. The Bears, if Jalen Duncan's available, I think they should swoop in, pick him up, and he's their left tackle of the future. And I know Braxton Jones, the rookie 5th-round pick out of Southern Utah, has got a lot of potential. But they can't just sit there and wait on potential. Put in Jalen Duncan, left tackle, let Braxton Jones fight it out with Larry Borum on the right side. But the Bears have to improve their offensive line, and I think a guy like Braxton Jones or Jalen Duncan would be a great pick for them, a home run pick. All right, Indianapolis Colts pick 18. We're sticking with the offensive line, and we're taking Peter Skorinski, the offensive tackle out of Northwestern. Left tackle has been an issue with the Colts. They want this stout offensive line to build their offense around, run the ball with Jonathan Taylor. Skorinski's a little bit on the shorter side, but we've seen tackles 6'4" have success in this league. Rashawn Slater, another Northwestern guy. Jamal Slayer's playing pretty good for the Chargers this year in Rashawn Slater's absence. Skorinski's a good athlete. He's stronger than you would think. There's some people that say he might have to move inside a guard. Right guard's been a little bit of an issue for the Colts too. So I think they look here and say, hey, Peter Skorinski, come in. We'll try him at left tackle. If he doesn't work, maybe we can move him to right guard. But I think he can kind of play inside or out. And the Colts, like I said, if could use that left tackle. And if you look at the guys, the top tackles in the league, most of them are first-round picks. So I think the Colts look in here and say, hey, we need to get this position fixed. Let's put some high resources into it. All right, 19, Miami Dolphins. Playing pretty well. Tua's kind of looking like he's fitting well within Mike McDaniel's offense. They've got good receivers. I think offensive line could be an issue here. I just don't know. If Cedric Van Pran was available, I think this would be a no-brainer. Might be a little bit higher for Jared Patterson. A couple guards I like. I'm not quite sure on. There's not really a right tackle here that I really like either. So I think they go defensively. I think they go a cornerback, and they go with Christian Gonzalez from Oregon. Here's a guy who comes from a very athletic family, track background, started his career at Colorado, now is at Oregon. A guy that's got, no one's going to run past him. He's got good size. I think he fits well within their defense where they want to play press man coverage and rely on those cornerbacks to play on an island. And so I think a guy like Christian Gonzalez, Byron Jones is kind of maybe looking like he could be a cap casualty. Noah Igbenogany is a guy that hasn't lived up to his first-round billing. So I think they need someone opposite of Xavier Howard, and I think Christian Gonzalez can be that guy. All right, Tampa Bay. We're in the 20s. This team, when Todd Bowles took over, they talked about being a run-first team. And I know you got Tom Brady, you got a bunch of good receivers. How much longer is Tom Brady going to be around? And so I think they're going to wanting to convert to being that run-first offense, playing good defense. I think they need a stud running back. They got Leonard Fournette, who's played well these past years. They got a few other guys. But Bijan Robinson, another guy that could be a top 10 rated player in this class, but he's a running back, so he's going to fall. I think that'd be a good logical fit for them. Give them a guy that can kind of do it all, can be a pass catcher, can be can run inside or out, fits with what they want to do. All right, Los Angeles Chargers. Now, this is an easy spot to mock a tackle just because that was the rumor that they were wanting to get a tackle last year in the draft to pair opposite of Rashawn Slater and really protect Justin Herbert. However, like I said, Jamal Slater's playing pretty well. And so I don't think tackle's as big of a need. And you can go defensive tackle. Once again, outside of your top two defensive tackles, I don't know if anyone's available right here that's worth this pick. And so the guy that I'm actually going to have him taken is a receiver. And I have him taking a guy that's not even listed very high, and that's Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers from Boston College. I'd heard some things about him. People, not a lot of, he's going to go in the first round. But he was a guy that I'd heard some buzz on. I went and watched him, not really knowing what to expect, and I was blown away. He reminded me of Antonio Brown with the Steelers. And the fact that he's not a big receiver, he's under 6 foot, but he's fast. He plays bigger than his size. He'd go up and high point balls in traffic. he can do it basically all. And I think the Chargers, you've got Mike Williams, you've got Keenan Allen, but those guys are both coming. Their contracts are coming up. I don't think they're going to be able to keep both of them. Plus, Keenan Allen, towards the end of his career, been hurt a lot, hurt again this year. Re-signed Mike Williams and bring in a guy like Zay Flowers, and I think he'd be a great pairing with Justin Herbert. Pick 22, New York Jets. Defense is playing pretty well this year. Zach Wilson's looking like he's playing pretty well. Let's continue to build up this team, and let's continue to build up this defense. And I haven't taken Trenton Simpson, the linebacker from Clemson. And you look at Robert Saleh and his defense coming over from San Francisco. He doesn't have a stud linebacker like they do in San Francisco. Let's get his version of Fred Warner. And there are a lot of similarities between Trenton Simpson and Fred Warner when Fred Warner was coming out of BYU as a mid-round pick. And I think Trenton Simpson's a guy that can rush off the edge. He's ultra athlete, flying sideline to sideline. He's powerful coming up and setting an edge. And I think putting him in that 4-3 under defense under Saleh, put him on that weak side linebacker, I think he can do a lot with what Saleh wants to do. And to me, it's kind of like a match made in heaven. All right, Green Bay Packers. I see a lot of people mocking wide receiver to the Green Bay Packers, and I understand that their receiver group this year isn't great. But they did just draft Christian Watson in the second round, Romeo Doubs later on, who's looking like he might be the better of the two at this point. I don't think they're going to take receiver here. That's just not their MO. I think they continue to build up this defense, and I like Jordan Battle right here, the safety from Alabama, a guy that's played the post safety, that free safety, over the top, single high safety for Alabama. He's got good range. He's got good instincts. Adrian Amos, might not be on the team next year. Might be looking to move him on from him in a couple of years, whatever it may be. They got Darnell Savage. Get him a free safety to pair with him, and that's why I like Jordan Battle there. All right, Baltimore Ravens. I have them going edge rusher here. Once again, not a whole lot of needs, but pass rusher is one of them. And a guy that I think fits well with what they want to do is Isaiah Foskey. He's more, I think, I like Myles Murphy a little bit better from Clemson, but I think Foskey fits that 3-4 defense better. A guy that kind of play more in space, play with, in a 2-point stance, guy that can drop in the coverage if need be. He's just a little bit more fluid, and that's why I like him there. All right, pick 25, Tennessee Titans. They can go a lot of different directions here. I think offensive line is their biggest need, both left tackle and left guard. I think cornerback is a big area of need also. But I'm going to buck this trend, and I'm going to have them take Jordan Addison, the wide receiver out of USC. And my reasoning for that is they need more explosiveness on their offense. Derrick Henry is still a stud. I think Treylon Burks, who they drafted in the top 20 last year, is going to be a good NFL receiver. Don't get me wrong. He's showed a lot as a rookie early on before he's got put on IR that he can be a good NFL receiver. But I think what Jordan Addison brings to them is some explosiveness, some speed, some over-the-top ability. And you've got a good play-action game with Derrick Henry. You can have Treylon Burks working that middle of the field, the short to intermediate, and maybe he's still taking shots downfield. But then you got Jordan Addison, a true field stretcher, and you pair him up. You got Robert Woods. You've got Treylon Burks. You add Jordan Addison along with, a guy like, Nick Westbrook. And I think that receiving core just continues to get better, especially if and when Malik Willis takes over. All right, pick 26, New York Giants. I have them going a cornerback, and I like the guy out of TCU, Travius Hodges Tomlinson, Danian Tomlinson's nephew. To me, the Giants continue to need defensive backs. Hodges Tomlinson is a guy that I think Fits that TCU mold of guys that have come out lately, just tough, physical, maybe not the biggest size, could kind of play inside or out, and I think that really kind of fits in Wink Martindale's defense where you need cover corners. I think he's a guy that could really fit with what they want to do. All right, Dallas Cowboys pick 27. This is where I have Myles Murphy going off the board. Like I said, he very well could go much higher, but I think he's a true hand in the dirt, traditional defensive end in a four-man front. And the Cowboys, they've got a good defense. They got DeMarcus Lawrence. You've got Micah Parsons. Just add another guy once again so you can continue to move Micah Parsons around. DeMarcus Lawrence, how much longer is he going to be with the Cowboys? Just kind of seems to fit there. All right, Kansas City Chiefs. I also have them going pass rusher. They could go offensive tackle. It wouldn't shock me, but I just don't really like the offensive tackles at this spot. So I think they go edge rusher. And a guy that I'm not super high on, but I know a lot of people are. And I think he's listed as a defensive lineman here. Yeah, Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech. I know he is viewed pretty highly in the scouting community. A lot of other mock drafters have him. I need to watch more of him, but he is having a dominant year at Texas Tech, challenging to be the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's got good size, and I think he gives them that kind of tweener defensive end, a guy that you can kind of maybe move inside a little bit too. And we see what they do with Chris Jones. They just need more defensive linemen, and I think getting a guy like Tyree Wilson, then you got him, you've got George Karlaftis, you've got Chris Jones. The Chiefs play with a lot of leads, and so they need good pass rushers because the teams they're playing are throwing the ball so much. And I think this just makes a logical sense for the Chiefs. Vikings, I have them going pass rusher too, and I actually have them going with a guy that I really like. I don't know if he's going to end up being a first-round pick, but that's Zion Tupola Fatui, and I probably butchered that name. I really like this guy, and I know he's got some injury issues. Isn't putting up huge numbers this year, but he has that athleticism. I watch him. I see Joe Tyron, who's playing pretty well for the Bucs, and I think he's even more athletic and better than him, and he was a late first-round pick. Like I said, I think injuries and that could cause him to fall out, but I'm just a huge fan of him. He's a top 15 player on my board. All right, Buffalo. I think they go offensive line here. And I have them taking a guy from Alabama. Once again, I'm a lot higher on than others, and maybe I'm wrong, which has happened before. Emil Ekiyor Jr., he's their left guard, or right guard, sorry. He's a guy to me, you look at the Bills. Their offensive line, I think, is pretty underrated. But you got Roger Saffold at left guard, who's old. No offense, Roger. You got Ryan Bates at the right guard. I know the Bears really wanted to sign him as he was a restricted free agent, and the Bills blocked it. So they got some pieces, but they're getting old, and so I think getting a guy like Ekiyor would give them that youth, give them some more depth, and help protect Josh Allen. All right, final pick is the Philadelphia Eagles. I have them going pass rusher. I have them taking Felix Ozoma, from Kansas State. And here's another guy. Once again, I think he's more of a 4-3 type fit. You can call him a base defensive end, but I think he's a talented guy that could rush off the edge, rush inside, and kind of fit that mold. And I think the Eagles, they love to draft defensive linemen early. We saw it this past year taking Jordan Davis. They've got some solid edge rushers, but they don't have any young up-and-coming ones. And so I think with 2 first-round picks, you go out and you get a defensive back in Malachi Moore that can kind of play all over. Now you get a defensive end to kind of groom and turn into a starter within a couple years, which they absolutely love. All right, that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for this draft. If we take a look at this, a lot of stuff, like I said, my draft is a lot different than a lot of people. As we see here, Will Levis, Panthers, Carter to the Raiders, Will Anderson. Lots of guys that I'm a little bit higher on, or I think players could